Hello. This podcast is being recorded on April 28th, 2020, as we begin a second month of staying at home because of the coronavirus pandemic. This is a very difficult, worrisome time for all of us, but I think those of us who love to read might just be having a slightly easier time of it. In times of stress or loneliness or boredom, we automatically turn to books to pass the time and to ease our mind. And when we are overworked and overbusy, we find ourselves longing for the time to shut out the world through reading. I have no doubt that many of us have been passing these long, anxious days by reading anything and everything. I certainly have. And back in the days when I could visit a library most any time I needed books, I had no use for electronic books. I convinced myself that there simply was no substitute for a printed book that I could hold and turn the pages and be comfortable with. But the pandemic has changed everything, including my feelings toward ebooks. Now I love them. I was not fully prepared for the stay-at-home order. I did stock up on groceries and cleaning supplies, but, and shame on me, I'm a librarian, I did not think to bring home a big box of books. 1 week into isolation, I ran out of books, and that to me was far more troublesome than running out of paper towels or bleach. So I bit the bullet and downloaded a book from Hoopla. My first discovery was that it was incredibly easy. I had not tried to download a book for several years, and when I did it before, it was complicated and frustrating. Now I have learned it is amazingly easy and fast. Once I select a title, it takes less than 20 seconds to download to my phone. I also discovered that I can stop reading at any time, turn off the phone or use it for something else, and when I return and call up the book, it will open exactly at the spot I left off. And most importantly, by the time I was just a few pages into my first Hoopla book, I realized that I was perfectly comfortable reading that way. In fact, in many ways it's better than a printed book. It's easier to hold, page turning is just a tap on the screen, and if I run into a word I don't know or something I want to know more about, a tap or two will take me to the information I want. So there it is. I have been converted and baptized, and I will be reading ebooks from this point forward. Since the stay-at-home order went into effect, I've read 13 books downloaded from Hoopla, and I've been able to pass the time pretty easily. I thought for this first podcast, I would share with you my 5 favorites. Again, remember, these are all available through Hoopla, and you access Hoopla at no charge with your Wooddale Library card. Just go to the home page, wooddalelibrary.org, and click on Download eBooks, Audiobooks, and Movies. Then click on Hoopla, and you're on your way. So my first recommendation is called Lady Clementine, an historical novel by Marie Benedict. This is the story of Clementine Spencer, better known as Mrs. Winston Churchill. The story begins in 1909 and follows Clementine through her tumultuous and often troubled marriage to the irascible Winston Churchill. She was his most trusted confidant, and she was involved with some of the most critical and crucial decisions of World War II. Yes, this is fiction, but it is based on fact, and it was very seriously researched and documented for authenticity. Next comes a title that I probably chose because I've been spending time watching The Crown on Netflix. And by the way, you can get a 1-month free trial of Netflix if you're interested. That's plenty of time to see The Crown and House of Cards, and by the time you've finished, hopefully restrictions will have eased and you can cancel Netflix and get on with real life. Anyway, the book I chose was The Gown by Jennifer Robson. This is another historical novel, and it tells the story of one of the most famous wedding dresses in history, Queen Elizabeth's wedding gown. The night before I borrowed the gown, I had watched the Netflix episode of The Crown that covered Queen Elizabeth's wedding. It was very interesting. This book is a quick read and very entertaining. My third favorite of the 13 books was A Trucker's Tale by Ed Miller. This nonfiction book is written in the first person and recounts the day-to-day life of a long-haul trucker. We see these huge trucks on the highways every day and usually don't give them a second thought unless we are unable to pass them or they in some other way seem to slow us down. But the life of a trucker is far from easy, and now as all of us struggle with interruptions in the food chain, we may end up with a greater appreciation of the work these truckers do. This book is an eye-opening and, I think, a novel well worth reading. In second place of my 5 favorites is Welcome to the Pineaway Motel and Cabins by Katerina Bavald. This is fiction, and though it is written in the first person, the person telling the story is no longer living. Her name is Henny, and she was killed while trying to walk across the highway by the Pines Creek Motel. Death does not stop her, though, from meeting with old friends and learning about love and friendship and community and the art of living, even though it's already too late. And my pick for favorite of the 13 books I read is The Woman Who Smashed Codes by Jason Fagon. If you enjoyed Hidden Figures, either the book or the movie, you will enjoy this book. This tells the little-known story of Elizabeth Smith, a brilliant Shakespeare scholar who went to work for an eccentric tycoon in, get ready, Batavia, Illinois. The year was 1916, and she was hired to participate in an exciting new venture, code breaking. This book is the story of this extraordinary woman who played an integral role in our nation's history for 40 years, yet most of us have never heard of her. Her missions in World War I and World War II was to break enemy codes that were intercepted by the military. While living and working in Batavia, she married fellow cryptologist William Friedman, and together they literally wrote the books on breaking complex codes. During World War II, Elizabeth fought a highly classified battle of wits against Hitler's Reich, and she cracked multiple versions of the Enigma machine used by German spies. The codes that were intercepted were multi-layered and incredibly complex, but she seldom needed more than a few hours to decipher them. And consider this, the codes she was cracking were written in German and Japanese, neither of which language she actually spoke. Now, how she did it is explained in the book, and even though I could never do it, I could understand the methods she used. One of the major streets running through Batavia is Fabian Boulevard. The eccentric tycoon who employed Elizabeth Smith and her husband was George Fabian, and once I'm again free to wander about, now I will visit the Fabian Villa Museum and Garden in Batavia, a place I did not know existed until I read this fascinating book, The Woman Who Smashed Codes. So there they are, 5 books I very much enjoyed and recommend. And here's another great thing about Hoopla ebooks. If you read a chapter and it's just not something you care to keep reading, a couple of clicks and you return the book and select a different one. Thanks for listening.